Welcome to Oregon Voters Digest, the program that brings forward the social and political issues that are important to people living here in the Pacific Northwest. And now, your host, Bruce Broussard.
Welcome again to this segment of the Oregon Voters Digest. I'm Bruce Broussard with you today, and boy, we're going to have quite a show today, and my guest is a very articulate one here from the community of Portland, Oregon. And I'll just be right up front with you. There's some issues here that are of major concern. We're right in the midst of politics. Politics has begun, and as you can see, that I've got my poster up here. Vote for Bruce Broussard for Portland Mayor. Let's talk. And the bottom line is very simple. I'm a certified candidate running for mayor of the city of Portland. And who said there can't be a black mayor?
Right.
In the city of Portland.
That's right.
And there's been a lot of talk about our state and city as if to say black folks don't live here. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing wrong with talking about black folks talking about black folks. I mean, we have issues within our communities too. But we're all Americans. In fact, we're a piece of the turf.
Right.
This is not something that we're just getting here and migrating. And I just wanted to make sure that that we talk a little bit about that because my guest today, two guys that I've known for a number of years, and the fact that they're very much involved in the politics of the state, the national perspective. They can talk to you about any subject matter that you might want to bring up as it relates to this country and what the issues are. And so I thought it would be an ideal time to do so. Again, we're right in the political ring. We got the whole issue of the impeachment thing right now, and a lot of folks don't look at TV. Right. A lot of folks don't read the newspapers and whatever. But there's a lot of things that we need to do today because of where we are in terms of time. And I've been doing this for years, and like I said, I'm sharing. And it's always good that I'm always reaching out for folks to pick up the baton and run from that point and use this as a vehicle, the Oregon Voters Digest, to give them that opportunity to be a part of the whole. So what I'm going to do now, first thing I'm going to introduce the gentleman that's with me right now, Rassam Muhammad, right?
Yes,
Am I
sir.
right? Did I do that right?
You did that
And
excellent.
did I do it pretty good?
You did, and I know that can be troubling sometimes.
Yeah,
Brother, I just want to thank you for the opportunity in this platform. We've known each other for about a couple of decades now.
Know your mom.
That's right.
Know your mom. Mom's
My
good
mother.
People. Yeah, that's quite a family.
That is quite a family.
That's quite a family. And I know one of them I know real well, James.
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. James is still blazing.
He's still blazing. He's still blazing. I owe him a call, by the way. If
you should give him a call.
I gotta give him a call.
He's burning. He's on the skillets in the name of my grandfather, his father, Ulysses Harris.
Yes.
And that man is a resilient.
Oh man,
resilient
that whole family. That family.
Oh man, I'm just trying to hold up the. I'm telling you.
You're doing a good job.
Well, I appreciate
you might
that.
want to tell mom that too, by the way.
Man, shout outs to my mother,
Yes.
Betty Harris.
Yes.
She is
She's awesome. She's tough.
Many things.
Yes.
She has about 11 to 12 books right now that are selling online. It's just a wonderful example.
We got to interview her.
And a lot of people have forgotten. I would love to interview her.
Please interview her. You can do this. You can sit in this seat and bring her here. And
I would love to.
Let her know that. Please let her know that.
I would most
because she brings quite a value. She has a history that, in all due respect, a lot of folks don't know. You know what I'm saying? You got me?
One of those things. She ran against Earl Blumenauer.
Yes.
In the '89 cycle for city commissioner.
Yes.
So that was my introduction.
Yes.
As a baby.
Really?
Into local politics here in the city of Portland.
Wow.
Yeah, I
Dad's
can go
still
on
kicking?
and on. Dad is still
He's
blazing.
Still kicking? All right, good.
Master Samuel A.
Yes.
Independent wine salesman.
Man.
Living the dream.
Yes.
Yeah, I come from.
You got quite a family. Your background is deep.
That's right.
You prime stock.
Well, I am striving to try to continue in that line.
Well, you're doing a great job.
I appreciate that.
I know you're very much involved in community and the like, and that's why I say there's a very timely thing to do so right now.
Absolutely.
And we are in need to expose the leadership that exists here in the state of Oregon, and even more specifically Portland, Oregon, because as you know and as I know, a lot of times folks don't realize this, but within our country there's a Portland, Oregon in every state of Oregon. And there's a Portland, Oregon in every state of this country. Where in the early days, when they started talking about affirmative action and those soft dollars and whatever, they had to have a Portland, Oregon. And those dollars would come to this particular state. And the rationale is that there's a lot of problems that exist, so to speak. That's the only justification for getting the money. See? So a lot of times people, I can say that today because I've seen it and I've dealt in it politically, and so they're not looking for solutions because otherwise you'd lose the money. So the money comes here, then it gets dispersed from here. The whole housing issue should have been solved a long time ago. A lot of people don't realize that PDC, Portland Development Commission, was designed specifically to develop home ownership. Back then, that should have been totally resolved in terms of home ownership. But anyway,
well, that's very interesting that you bring that up. The negotiated deal that was made based on the 1962 and then also the 1969 study of the city of Albina.
Yes.
We were under the oppression, we being the community, and at that time, the local community was under the guise of Emmanuel Displaced Persons Association. And that is the community entity that the formerly PDC, before that it was another name, and today currently Prosper Portland, but the arrangement to rebuild the 330 roughly black homes that the property that Emmanuel sits on was taken. They were supposed to rebuild those homes, so they were definitely operating under the guise of building homes or rebuilding the homes, but even up to this day we haven't seen that happen. As of August of 2017 was when the last announcement was made by today Prosper Portland that they were going to develop on this land, and the community immediately came back out and said no, under the organization and leadership power of our sister Bird in the community. She reorganized Emmanuel Displaced Persons Association Part 2 to make sure that if anything is built on that land, that we will benefit the black community who lost that, and the descendants of who were directly homeowners on that property. So that's that issue of homelessness, which I do understand that's your platform that I heard that you're running on. I mean, what better platform to be running on as mayor for the city of Portland right now? With the current leadership, it just seems as if we're being, and I use that loosely, pushed around in terms of what the interests are and how to actually bring the solutions of homelessness in this area, you know, because it's an issue that must be tackled, but I don't think that there's consensus from the so-called houseless or homeless community with regards to how to best alleviate these issues. Because of course, when you're talking about homelessness, you're talking about jobs or the ability to maintain rent and or a mortgage. And with the current job situation, I don't know how the real estate market is going to be supported when you don't have the number and or the type of wage that allows a person or individual to live in Portland, Oregon. Really, there was a report that came out that said an annual salary of $103,000 still across the entire nation does not allow you to be a homeowner. So when you think about that, I mean, 20 years ago, my goal was to get at $100,000 a year so that I could be a homeowner, and that's not sufficient anymore. So I don't mean to be long-winded on it, but there's definitely, when you bring up Portland with regards to political leadership and progressiveness, Portland has always been at the front line of the national debate, and it's been Portland blacks who have been at the forefront of that national debate with regards to houselessness, homelessness, with regards to affirmative action, with regards to inclusion, teaching the nation how to work with black people in the workplace. A lot of those ideologies and philosophies came from black people out of Portland, Oregon, and this area.
Exactly. And you know, and then when you think about the word assimilation, the beneficiaries of all that hard work from that front part with the black folks. You know what I mean? They have been advancing big time. Excuse the French, the Asian community.
That's right.
The Hispanic community, the Mexican community. I'm getting the other one in at the same time. And folks don't realize that, and that assimilation has not done the things that it was supposed to have done. We've not assimilated. We're still looking at the same definition of who we were back when, out of the Revolutionary War.
Come on.
Out of the I mean, when we picked up Lincoln, and that, in all due respect, I still identify with Lincoln. You know, I say I'm a Lincoln Republican. The rationale is that it brings up that history. Because we were Union soldiers. I mean, he basically allowed blacks, slaves at that point in time, to become a part of that assimilation, because that Civil War was about assimilation of all the people that were here. White folks were slaves too. See, during that particular time, and he said, okay, fine. So everybody there actually joined that so-called war, and they were called Union soldiers. See, too often we forget. Today we play it as far as again, not assimilating us within that arena. And they basically said, well, we're Buffalo Soldiers. No, that's just an organization.
Come on.
The Union soldiers we were. And if you want to get a better feel of that, look at the movie Glory with Denzel Washington and
Right.
Morgan Freeman.
Right.
We were Union soldiers. We fought with the whole, if you will, to keep that one flag, because we had all kinds of flags here.
That's right.
All kinds of flags. This was the American citizenry. That was it.
You know, it's interesting when you look at Oregon and its statehood.
Yes.
Oregon is the last constitutional state of the Union, the 33rd state,
Yeah.
1859. And when you also reflect on, they don't talk much about this, but in the midst of those heated battles in Lincoln meeting to try to preserve the Union,
Yes.
he called black leaders to the White House to ask them, what do you want to do? We'll give you a send-off. We'll provide provisions for you to be in a separate state or territory on your own. And Lincoln really was of the mind that the black people should be separate and that they should have their own land and live their equal lives. But our black leaders then said, no, we don't want a separate state or territory of our own. We want to stay here with you. And in my opinion, that showed a certain white power structure that these people don't want to be free. And so that's something that, we really have to take a look at, because out of that, you have the flipping of where Democrats became Republicans and Republicans became Democrats.
That's right.
In those days, there wasn't much talk at all about being a democratic form of governance. This is a republic. So there are many things of our history that we know nothing about, and that really shows why we're so blind today, and not understanding what is taking place from the national level all the way down to our local scene.
Exactly. Well, that's that historical piece. We got about an hour here, and I want to take advantage of this time
Yes, sir.
as much as I possibly can with you, and hopefully, from a futuristic standpoint, you will accept the fact that you can sit in this chair. Hopefully, we'll talk about these issues, and
dear brother,
it's very, very important to educate our surroundings. Very important. Very important to black folks as it is to white folks.
That's right.
But we're all Americans now. We're not going back. It's just but the history exists.
To be quite honest with you, brother, I don't know that our brothers and sisters want us to invade. With the fight for water and resources today, I think they want us to stick where we're at.
Yeah, we're not going anywhere.
That's right.
But the idea is that I wanted to make sure that we could talk about these issues across the board, and we're going to be talking from that perspective. You know what I mean? Because we have some brilliant folks running around here in the state of Oregon, right here in Portland.
That's right.
And you happen to be one of them. I'll be right up front with you. Well, then I thought what we'd do, we'd sort of talk about maybe some of the very current issues, and if there's anything else on your mind that you'd like to bring up to the table, no problem. But that was, and this is a very sensitive issue, because when you start thinking about communication, you think about media. You got me?
That's right.
And every entity has a media.
That's right.
And a lot of times what happens is that with the media, and I'll just be right up front with you talking about black folks within the state of Oregon, and because we live in the largest city in the state of Oregon, Portland, Oregon, there's a sort of an expectation that our media was our black newspapers. Or whatever it was. In fact, we had radio stations at one point in time. And back in the old days, I can still remember the Roy Jays and those kind of guys. They had the music, and it was about music. You know,
That's right.
it was bumping, so
That's
to speak.
right.
But the bottom line is that we have medias here, and newspaper was pretty reliable source aspect of it. And I'm saying that this, and I'm going to talk to it this way, but we can talk about the history of it. But the bottom line is that this issue that comes up about the NAACP, I think within our environment aspect of it, it's been around here for some time. But then at the same time, in terms of the media aspect of it, we had newspapers, black newspapers. I can remember Bang Bang Walker and several other folks aspect of it. In fact, I was even at one point in time with the Portland Observer newspaper, and the possum incidents and things of that. I'm just thinking from my perspective, but there were a lot of things. And the idea is that we needed that education. I can say this today. The possum incident is still sitting on the table, and there's not been a discussion. And I was right in the middle of it. Ron Herndon was part of that piece too. But at the same time, we had no medium that actually educated folks about what that was all about.
Right.
Even the movement on Head Start. That story still hasn't been told.
That's right.
And that was a heck of a piece as far as young people was concerned. And Ron Herndon was the focal point, of that whole piece. They made it national.
That's
and
right.
then the young man is right back here today, still sitting on MLK.
That's right.
And he's got he created that whole issue and had folks around him and whatever. But my point is that it was at one point in time, it was about educating black folks. I mean, that whole medium of Head Start was in the black churches to begin with.
That's right.
And they pulled it out. And now today, we don't have that media.
That's right.
I'm just being straight up with you. But getting back to the media aspect of it, and I'm using this, and people will probably recognize it. You might have recognized within the Portland Tribune. In fact, it's kind of an interesting piece. I like the Portland Tribune because it's free, and
Right.
it's just sitting out there. It's open, and in all due respect, it's probably the only medium that I tend to identify with from the standpoint of being able to assimilate some of the ideals of black folks.
Right.
We have two other mediums, the Scanner newspaper and the Portland Observer newspaper. But the fact is, on this particular issue about the NAACP, they had no article. There was nothing about the NAACP in an issue that really talks to black folks.
Right.
Got me? And it's so important in many ways for black folks who are in this kind of a business, if you will, to be able to educate not only black folks, but educate white folks.
Right.
Very, very important. And so I just want to bring that point up, and I think it could have been a very effective job. But still, this interview that we're talking about right now, I think we need to talk about it. I got my journalism hat on now today, and I want the Voters Digest to basically talk a little bit about what happened in this piece. And so as a result of this, I asked my guest whether or not he might be able to spend a little time on this issue and just share with the people of Portland and the state of Oregon and the world for that matter, because this has been considered the whitest city
Right.
in the country, right? You got me? And want them to know that it's not just the whitest city. It is the whitest, sister. We're here.
That's right.
But my point is that we just don't have the exposure. But hopefully, as time goes, we're spend a little bit more time on that, and we want to spend some time on this piece. So, if with further ado, why don't I just go on and hand it to you and just say it? I'll just put this. It was in the port, and if you want to Google this, and you can do this, you can Google this in the Portland Tribune, the Thursday edition, November the 14th. Okay, it's in the Portland Tribune. It's right on the front page. And the title of the article says, "Misconduct Charges Throw Local Chapter of the NAACP into Turmoil. President accused of sexism, misuse of funds, and threats." That's pretty heavy.
That's very heavy. In fact, why don't you turn the article around so that our viewers can see that cover?
There you go.
Because
Can you
this
see
is
this on
very
that?
important.
Pull that in for us, will you, Don? Let's see if you can catch that. You want me to do it this way? Is that better?
That's fine, just to
How's
get a
that?
glimpse.
Why don't you pull that in there and kind of bring it right on in there? This is the Portland Tribune newspaper. Okay.
Yeah, the
Just keep talking.
the timing of this article coming out right now is interesting because this is an issue, quite honestly, that's been going on for quite some time. I always wondered, um, you know, becoming a part of the NAACP was something in Portland that when I was growing up, many of us young black people were encouraged to become a part of it. It was one of very few organizations that really had, I guess, what you would call a safe uh, representation with regards to black organizations. And becoming a part of the NAACP has always been a great honor. But when we look at the current situation and what the leadership is being brought up for currently, these were issues that have been known by quite a few on the way down to auditors and people in the know.
Yeah.
And as far as I'm concerned, the time that it would have been, I mean, we're talking about going as far back as 2015 as these issues that are in the Tribune article today were being brought up back then. And so maybe or perhaps because a particular political candidate that was coming out of the NAACP into a new post, it really appeared that our media didn't want to touch that. And so the question that I'm asking is, why are these things important now? Why is the current leadership, and what has the current leadership been doing, and how has the current leadership conducted itself in that Passover? And then the numbers, the math. You had started off the program talking about there's money that is allocated, it's distributed. Small organizations and institutions are developed to disperse that money. And then we get funny leadership in the positions to disperse the money. But at the time when there is no money, very few people are around. And that's why I do commend our current commissioner, who is part of the or was part of the NAACP, for bringing that institution's membership up. But in terms of the utilization of the organization, which is a national organization, for local gain or personal gain, really is what we see impeachments, inquiries
Same concept.
being held about.
Yeah.
So the thing that I say annoys me with regards to the black community and how we establish our leadership is that we have failed to establish that body that calls our brothers and sisters in who would want to be leadership and who are currently leadership, to get them on the page with the black community before we release you out there to represent the black community and misrepresent the black community. Because if our newspapers are not going to talk about these issues, certainly the white newspapers will constantly bring up our organizations to discredit our organizations, not the individual misrepresentation of those organizations by leadership.
Good point.
So it's something that needs to have a spotlight on it right now, and we need to have a swift and unified passing of the guard. Because we're in a critical time right now in this local area, but nationally and internationally, with regards to our economic state and our social state. And media has transferred over from print media, newspaper media, to social media, to TV shows. But we're not developing readers to be able to dig into what's going on. So we're relying on the quick excerpts in TV, a soundbite on CNN here and there. But the majority of young people, the demographic that is coming into power and in power, 18 to 35, the majority of their news comes by from flashes on social media.
That's right. That's right.
So it shows like this, and brothers like yourself, who are able to, through this platform, read for the people, for lack of a better expression. And I don't mean that condescendingly, but I mean that from the standpoint is that if we're not taking the time to get these audits, to read through the newspaper articles, to find out what's at the root and the core, then we are forced to make snap judgments based on headlines or snap judgments based on a 1-minute video excerpt and a misrepresentation of the full-on scope. And that's why independent shows like this, who are able to show in its entirety the total discussion. You know. There's many things that we're going to hear more about coming down the line, and you know, some of these documents that I have here that are not available to the public are going to shine quite a bit of light on this subject with regards to the NAACP, because there's grave problems that they really do go all the way up the line to the leadership in the city of Portland right now.
You know, I might add too that when I saw the article, my first approach was its president. I went to see him. I tried to see him about 2 or 3 times, but unfortunately he didn't respond. Okay, but I will say that when the Tribune put the article out, he responded.
Naturally.
You understand? And as I read it, and being a former vice president of the NAACP, there were some things missing. See, they needed an interpreter. And I was trying to act in that capacity to feel it, be respectful, if you will, to know where he's at. And as you indicated up front to begin with, is that the person who had kind of gotten this thing on a more progressive basis at this level basically was over here at the Lloyd Center. That's basically where the office is right now. And Joanne Hardesty had quite a bit to do with basically getting it moving, if you will, to a certain degree. And subsequently, you know, she's now a sitting city council person. And I'll be right up front. I approached her.
Were you successful?
Well, I was told after I saw her, I gave her my business card, and I've had her on the show before when she was running. And just a little sidebar, there was some questions about when I interviewed her during that particular time when she was running, and the fact that the public did not feel that she was in fact a former military person. Well, I had her here with me, and she had to show me her DD 214. The certificate.
You called it out, huh?
I called it out, and then I showed it to the public. And then, as you can see, what happened, all of a sudden she became a veteran overnight. But anyway, but the bottom line is that when I saw her the other day, and I said, well, look, we need to talk and whatever. And I saw her down at the county because I was doing some stuff there, and she gave me my card back. And so I went to her office and said, well, look, I'd like to see the commissioner. And the young lady who was the receptionist there, who didn't know me, but I gave her my card, and I said I'd like to see her, and she said, well, Mr. Broussard, it was Mr. Broussard then, it was, it'll be about 4 to 6 weeks out. See, so, you know, like you said, we got to do something here, see.
Well, you know, the interesting thing about what you're mentioning, and, you know, I'm not one to talk about leadership and current leadership, but that reminds me of a program show just a few weeks ago on Cable Radio with Mr. Montanet and Ms. Hardesty, Commissioner Hardesty, and a brother by the name of James Posey.
Yes, Mr. Posey. He's in this article too, by the way.
I'm sure he is, because it was the black community's understanding that this would be Commissioner Hardesty's chief of staff.
Yes.
Once she got in office. And to come all the way down to a program on KBOO
Now,
when
is this-
the chattering.
Who was it, the president or was it Mr. Posey?
This was Mr. Posey
Who was going to be
calling calling.
He's going to possibly be the chief of staff.
According to our
Very capable, by the way.
think tank, that is what Commissioner Hardesty had promised Mr.
Interesting.
Posey
Interesting.
to his face.
Hmm.
And so I'll let Mr. Posey tell his own story with regards to his changing of his feelings about Commissioner Hardesty, because just a few weeks ago on KBOO Radio, when he called into the program, she very abruptly hung up on that man. And as a brother who I'm very familiar with Commissioner Hardesty, I've worked with her on anti-police matters. I'm very familiar with our brother, Mr. Posey,
Yep.
who worked for many, many years and continues to work
In community. big
on
time.
behalf of organizing for the
Yep.
Million Man March
Yep.
and Honorable Minister Louis
Yep.
Farrakhan. And he's been on the trail, and to hear her deal with him like that and to see that relationship go down the drain. There are many of us young black aspiring to be in some of these positions that left a very bad taste in our mouth about, because he really worked hard to put her in office.
Yes, I know he did. He's a businessman too.
He is. I
Very
had
legitimate.
myself concerns
Yeah.
about his support
Yeah,
of Commissioner Hardesty late on. I tried to give him warnings, but he's a very loyal
Yes, he
brother,
is.
and when he is for you, he is for
Oh,
you.
yeah, that's James.
And to see that in this hour, and then to hear you,
Oh, yeah.
who I mean, this is the thing. The people we have been familiar
Yeah.
with our brothers and sisters who climb this ladder, and then when they get to the top, we keep and continue to hear this story of basically turning our back on the community, because, and this is why the show and this work that you're taking on is so important, because we have to now take control of our politicians
Yep. Yep.
and the national political scene today, because there is grave and dire disunity in our country. And right now, I mean, on the current edition of the Final Call newspaper, you have right here a nation on edge.
Yeah,
And this is right now
Put this right here. Put this right here.
breaking
go.
down the divide in the country. And so, you know, these issues, we got to get to our community. Because I mean, and you know, forgive me for getting a little emotional
No,
about
this
that, but
is good,
I'm
this is good.
very disappointed to hear that we have a 4 to 6 week wait to talk to our city commissioners,
yeah.
who are making history as
yeah.
some of the first black commissioners, but they're inaccessible now.
And we need to understand it. I mean, and again, like you said, this is not about you know, speaking very negative of her. It's the position that she identifies with.
That's right.
That's important to all of us. She happens to be sitting in that seat. And it's a very important seat because, in all due respect, the majority community relied on this community when we all basically were together and cited her, because she was running against another black woman.
Yes,
That was
she was.
Loretta Smith. Okay,
A historical race.
You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? And so consequently, and I even made the statement, all due respect, you know, having been in this business for quite some time, I'll be right up front with you. If there was someone else running against her who was from the majority community, she wouldn't have won that race. I've been in politics a long time, because the whole race would have been different, and vice versa with Loretta, because there were some other things about Loretta when she was commissioner of District Number 2, when she was at the county. Concerns about finance and things of that nature, you know what I'm saying? And it was shown in the various newspapers in a negative way. So consequently, whoever ran, blah blah blah, etc. So here we are. We was going to get this was the first time we got someone sitting in that seat elected to office. But the majority community went in groves. But they only had these two selections.
Well, you know, to be honest, there were no white candidates that were going to jump into that race.
No, you know what I'm
I
saying?
mean,
yeah.
that, you know,
You see what I'm saying?
and the timing and the climate of that race, those candidates stepped away from that
Yeah,
race.
oh, yes.
So it was inevitable
yeah.
that we were going to get our first
Yes.
black female city
exactly,
commissioner.
Exactly.
But I really do now, hindsight,
Yeah, you trying to
looking
figure out-
back, media did not do, in my opinion, did not do former Commissioner Smith any justice
No.
with regards to reporting on some of these issues that we're dealing with right now. And when you look at leadership in the black community in Portland, Oregon, and please, somebody come fact check me on this, but I don't think there's anybody that has been responsible for bringing more dollars into the black community than former Commissioner Smith. We're talking about the things that we seen Mr. Herndon used to do back in the day.
yeah.
She was on the forefront of a lot of these issues, battling with very little help. So in this cycle coming up, this is going to be a hot little showdown coming up. And I'm glad to see a strong brother like yourself entering into the race, because we really do need a strong mayor who knows his position and will not allow special interest to push around the mayor. And so this is a defining period in Portland's politics right now.
You know, and since you brought that point up, you know, and like I said, like you said about Posey aspect of it, you know, chief of staff, that's nothing wrong. We've got very intelligent, articulate folks for staff. Be right up front.
That's right.
There's nothing wrong with
right.
that. Plus the fact we need that so-called boost, that educational cycle, something that introduces a person to that kind of an environment from a political aspect. You know, I'm sitting there, I'm 81 years old, and I've gone through this issue all these years. I've dedicated my whole self at one point in time to the Northeast Portland corridor, even to the point of when the so-called gerrymandering came up with the area. I was very much responsible for putting that district together. The whole idea to make sure something was in the, so we had something in the front of a person's name, representative, which, by the way, from a historical standpoint, Avell Gordley, Joanne Hardesty, Margaret Carter, they all came from that district as a result of black folks getting together. And in all due respect, Mr. Herndon was part of that. He and I went down there and lobbied down at the legislature to make sure we got that district. It wasn't a black district. It was a district where the number of the residents in that district happened to have been black folks. Okay?
So
a lot of history.
You segue right into this wonderful subject. Let me ask you, talk to me a little bit about how you feel about the Voters' Rights Act, in Section 4 in there, what you think about the up-and-coming census. I mean, when we take a look at these things, these are how lines are drawn for political districts. And with your experience, talk a little bit about what you see coming up with regards to this census. Should we be going as hard as we can to get as many people counted as possible? Talk about that.
Well, in all due respect, it goes right with the leadership. When I think about that, I think about the Black Caucus and how they're communicating to make sure that black folks understand the reasoning, if you will, for getting involved. And I don't see something. I don't see it. I'm sitting there in Portland, Oregon. I don't even see from a local perspective, for that matter, in terms of leadership.
That's right.
And that's a major concern. Now, I see certain aspects of from a national perspective, someone getting involved, and when I mean by that is that, but it's not said, but it's said in another way. And then this whole presidential election aspect of it, from the Democratic perspective, as you can see, there are a number of candidates that are running for office, and they're saying that whoever gets up there are going to have to identify with black folks. But they never bring up the name of the person who put the black folks together. And the man is on TV every day. His name is former presidential candidate Al Sharpton.
Come on.
He's the one that basically put that piece. He basically picked Biden, former Vice President Biden, as the person.
And then right behind that, we hear about a history of Mr. Sharpton and a relationship with the FBI
Oh, yeah, yeah.
right behind.
Yeah, that's right.
And so, and this is how media is used to distract. I mean, you know, you brought up, if you look at the impeachment inquiry and the approach that the Democrats are choosing to, I guess, settle the dissatisfaction from the 2016 elections. And when you take a look at, rather than developing new leadership and a candidate that can actually challenge the current president, they choose to bring, I mean, how long have these depositions and how long has this knowledge been known by those who are in the know? But because there was not a populist consensus, they are bringing those depositions out now for a TV spectacle. And you know, if I was a conspiracy theorist, I would say that the Democrats are absolutely making sure that they do not have a Democratic president in 2020.
That's right.
And you know, as we kind of chuckle at this,
That's right.
it's a very desperate time.
Yes.
And I think we have to be socially and politically wise in this hour. And in order to be that, we have to start not only just beginning to get involved through protest and boycott and cancel culture, but to actually get involved as well on the other side of things so that we can back our brothers and sisters up who are in the streets taking the stand. We can back them up with legislation. We can back them up with judges who will be able to distribute justice. Because when you look at right now, while all this is taking place, there are judges who are being appointed. When you look now that this year in 2019 was the first year that in the nation, the kindergarten, black and brown, became the majority. Now, when you look at these lifetime appointees of these judges today, and you look at how the so-called liberal judges or the left-leaning judges of today are being replaced by so-called, and I say so-called because we wear these badges of parties depending upon what is popular. But when we look at these appointments, these judges are going to be the judges who are judging the cases of our babies today. So that is something that we are not knowledgeable about, and we have to become knowledgeable about it, because the proper leadership that could guide the rudder of this ship called the United States of America is sitting and rotting in old institutions that are trying to describe a new paradigm. And so we really have to get our young brothers and sisters involved in voter registration, in being counted in the census, and grooming themselves for the leadership positions. Because quite honestly, how can you ask an individual who is not an electrician to change these lights in this room? We're gonna see some dead flies sitting out all over the place. So it's time now to create a safe space for the development of this new leadership. And that's something that, brother, I have watched you over the years, and that's what makes you different, is that not only are you looking for those to pass the many batons that you have too, but you're also working to develop, and you've never felt insecure
That's right.
by the youth that are coming up into this leadership. You have always taken on the role of a godfather and a father figure to the brothers and sisters in this community. I think that the current climate and the bipartisanship of our nation's divide right now cause those of us who may not statistically fall down on the categorical sides that black people are supposed to be in these political parties. I think that some of us may get a bad rap, but it's time now for truth to expose what is actually taking place in the political scene today. Because like I said a little earlier, you know, today's Democrats were yesterday's Republicans.
Yes, yes, yes. Well, hey, I want to thank you for those accolades, and I'm thank you also for bringing up Mr. Posey's name. You know, he's comparable, if you will. We've come up through some of the same ranks, if you will. You know what I'm saying? And in all of the organization that you might like NAMCO.
That's right.
And then you think about, I think about NAMCO, and I think about O.B. Hill, and
that's right.
And you know, and those guys, those dudes, and James was right there too. And fighting for the rights and understanding what this community was about. That's right. And understanding what the futures were, and making an attempt to change.
That's right.
And we've never walked away.
That's right.
And you know what I'm saying? And it's a fact. You're right. Sometimes like I said, I supported Joanne to get in that position. During that particular time, because she was a veteran. She said she was a veteran, and I'm a veteran. I'm a Vietnam veteran, and you know, in all due respect, there were areas even within my service in the Marine Corps, there was racism.
That's right.
But I went all the way up to the top.
That's right.
Know, and they taught me one thing. They taught me how to take care of myself. and I appreciate that. And this is my country.
That's right.
My country, tears of D. I was saying, I got a piece of the rock here.
That's right.
And you know, and I'm very familiar with my history and the brothers who fought ahead of that. You know what I'm saying? And that's why I always keep remarking in this whole issue about the movie Glory. And I can always cite about the fact my great-great-great-grandfather fought in the American Revolution.
That's right.
And through the years, you know, that kind of a deal. And so I'm still committed. I'm not going anywhere. And that's why I really appreciate you coming on. That's why I wanted you to come on. And there are other young brothers like you, and that I'd like very much to get into this process.
Absolutely.
As you mentioned about the judges, that's going to happen. With reference to where the majority is, and here we are still in a kind of a minority status, but we're in a majority status, and like usual, they're going to have to depend upon us to keep things going.
That's right.
You see what I'm saying?
That's right.
But we're not going to let it go nowhere, because this is home.
Well, I tell you what, you're right, and we are not going to let that go. At the same time, we're also going to document this history.
Oh yeah.
So that we can tell this story. Because, you know, the nation needs to know that it was the black men and women who tipped the balance of the scale to keep this union.
That's right.
And that is not spoken of much. When I say they, I mean mainstream media really puts forth a narrative that keeps the two sides, the two peoples divided.
Yeah.
And they tell a revised history of this country. And then, once again, sound bit in textbooks through the schools, which is something that we're going to have to probably dedicate an entire show to the Portland Public school system. I mean,
yes, because it's got to get into the books.
You know,
got to get into the books.
My wife and I, we have 4 children in PPS schools right now. And, you know, that is a full-time job with the PTA to make sure that our children are getting what is useful in the schools today. And, you know,
just to survive.
I mean,
you know what I'm saying? Just to survive. I'm not talking about, you know, that futuristic, that iTechs and things of that nature,
right?
Which we're not in.
Right. Well,
the voc eds are not in anymore.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, the trades are not in anymore. When I was going to school, there were trades when I was down south. You understand what I'm saying? And it was a progression thing. We don't have that here. Outside, and I'll get right back to it. But outside of this district, the Portland district, you have all kinds of services and assets.
Right, right. That's right.
In fact, you even got ROTC.
Come on.
You know, because I'm a product of ROTC
Right.
from down south.
That's right.
And that's when I well, even when I was born and raised in the country. I mean, my dad would take me out, you know, shooting his rabbits, you know, to eat with a shotgun or whatever. But I didn't know I never fired a single barrel weapon or 45 in my life until I got in ROTC. And I started off as a private and it ended up being the commander of the whole dang unit nationwide. And but I mean around the city. But the bottom line is that I learned a lot there. I learned a lot about leadership. I mean, it gave me something. And then after I got my scholarship and whatever. But at the end of the day, I still didn't get that education. I was considered one of the smart guys. But when I transferred my credit from Texas to California, my A's were C's.
Yeah, that tends to happen.
And fortunately, the Marine Corps was sitting there. And I volunteered. And I got to tell you this because it's a very important piece, because then I got in the Marine Corps. That became my education. I learned that piece, and I rose. I was still a champion within my own rights. And then after 10 years, after spending that time in Vietnam, I said, it's time for me to get out. I didn't have a degree. I had the opportunity to go to college. But the fact of the matter is, I didn't see anything at the end of college. So I went on my own because I could communicate. And I worked in every aspect of a job that I could have careered out of. IBM's, U.S. Bank, the whole 9 yards. I didn't realize what I was doing. But after I got through that process and ran for office and saw that because I had a certain ability, and then I thought about it, I said, well, now, everybody kept saying, well, the degree program around me, but they never bothered me about what I had attained. And so I finally figured it out. The whole key was that when you go on a job, the employee will always ask you, do you have any experience? Whether you got a PhD or whatever. And as a black man, I get elected, then I saw some of my friends not able to get to an area of expert unless they had a degree, and then there was the experience, and then we came up with the affirmative action thing. So we missed that education piece. But I had, because of the route I took, I was more than qualified. I've built houses. I mean, I've done a lot of things. You know what I mean? But I had that experience, and that's where that trade came in good for me.
Right.
See, so I'm just saying that, but the education system is supposed to do these other things for us.
That's right.
That we never had lack of, and that's another reason why I appreciate you brought up the Portland Public Schools. We still are sitting in that same arena with dollars coming in, and we're still identified as the lowest performing school in the entire state of Oregon. And all this money comes in, even paying teachers more money.
That's right.
Just to make sure that black kids are educated. But then you look at the sidebar of the other kids that are advancing. Asian community, you know what I mean? The kid that's making straight A's in math. Well, you know, 1 and 1 is 2 all over the world. We've established that.
That's right.
But in terms of comprehension, that's not required anymore in the education system. I mean, go on.
Well, no. You know, there's a book that I've started noting to write, and the subject of the book is the relationship or the two choices that the black man and woman had in the urban cities of America. It was the military or the Nation of Islam.
Right. Yeah.
And it was in these two institutions that black men and women learned to be productive. You know, and this is a history that needs to be talked about, because when you look at when we were in the times of slavery, when our first class of brothers and sisters who were brought over here builders and architects to carve out this nation. And then when they had children, those children were separated from their parents, and then the slave classes began to get bred. And when you talk about the options that a young brother or sister has in the cities, most of us coming up poor, all we had was the military or the Nation of Islam. And when you look at how the brothers who come out learning how to be dependent and take care of themselves in the military, and the brothers and sisters who develop in the Nation of Islam, where Islam brings out the militant propensity in the black man and woman, on the other side, the American military wanted to have the militant propensity of the black man and woman to continue to be used to maintain the United States of America. And so that's a history that needs to be brought out, because just recently, with the recent ban of Minister Farrakhan and other voices from social media, shows you that they want to create an entirely new narrative, you know, that causes leaders like our brother MLK and Garvey, you know, they'll be white. If we don't make sure that we're involved in data, involved in coding to be able to control our narratives and to put our stories out on the platforms and distribute our stories. Because, you know, now I want to close. I know we're out of time, but I want to give a huge shout out to our brothers and sisters in the entertainment and the sports industries who have been listening to Minister Farrakhan and have been doing what he has instructed, which is to become self-independent.
You know, I really appreciate that copy, because I met him, and we need to talk about this. Is phase one.
That's right.
And as I indicated to you before, I'm going to invite you back on, do this entire campaign of mine, because in all due respect, that majority community is being taught. They need to understand what this is all about.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? And then this country is based on that too, in many ways. So we're going to be talking about those things, and I want to appreciate the fact that you were here. And I want to thank you for being here with me today.
Oh man, it's an honor and a privilege.
And you know, and hopefully we can just go on and just sit down and start talking about what else we're going to do.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Now we got Thanksgiving is getting ready to come up.
That's
and everybody
right.
wants to know. They want you to enjoy your turkey day that's coming up. Relax. I mean, the whole 9 yards, because afterwards we're going to get down to business.
That's right.
I haven't eaten yet. Thank you very much. Appreciate that very much. Folks, well, as I indicated before, there's nothing wrong with speaking and talking about black folks.
That's right.
We are here. We're part of this country. Again, God bless America, as one would say, the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, the whole 9 yards. I plan to spend my campaign talking about all of us, and making sure that we have a better way of life here in this city of Portland. Have a good one.